G'day, Chris here and welcome back to ClickSpring. When it comes to selecting a long-term project, I tend to look for something that'll deliver on a few levels. Naturally, the work itself needs to be satisfying. This is after all about having fun in the shop. It also helps if it has a visually pleasing design. And then there's the need for a bit of a challenge. Some aspect of the project that pushes the limits and maybe widens the scope of the shop. And finally, there's something to be said for a project that also delivers something genuinely useful. So these are the qualities that I've aimed for with this next Patron Series, constructing a dial indicator. A tool that of course we could easily buy from any tool supply store, but if constructed in the home shop, gives us much more than just a tool. Now of course, depending on where you live in the world, you'll likely have a preference for either imperial or metric units. As it happens, I have a set of imperial gauge blocks, so it suited me to make the prototype with imperial units. But not a whole lot needs to change for a metric version, and we'll cover those differences as part of the build. One aspect of the project that immediately stands out is that a lot of the work is on a relatively small scale. There's much to be done on the lathe, mill and with hand tools, and because of this small scale, almost all of it requires fairly tight control of the dimensions. Often it's work holding that turns out to be the main issue with small components, so there's much in the way of jigs and fixture creation to get the best results for each part. And there's also an opportunity to experiment with a range of finishing techniques, with some components well suited to an industrial finish and others requiring something a little more polished. The nature of the design is that it can be considered as having three main sections: the basic movement, the dial assembly and the surrounding case assembly. So to some extent you could take a customised approach to the build, with some aspects being purely functional and others perhaps a little more elaborate and decorative. For the series prototype, I've chosen the aerodynamic, streamlined style of the 1930s for the case. And I've also used the dial to share the engine turning process that I've been learning over the past year or so. But those choices are not at all central or essential to the project, and we'll go through the many options and alternatives that can also be considered for the build. The construction of this sort of mechanism naturally invites the use of some interesting metal forming techniques, such as 3D printed patterns for investment casting. Again, this isn't a requirement, but it's such a useful process for the home shop, so I'll show how it can be used in this context anyway, should you ever need it. And there'll be some related tool design and construction running parallel with the main series as we go along too, to meet some of the requirements of the main project. All of this of course adds tremendously to the shop capabilities for whatever projects might follow after this build is complete, and so is very much the long-term payoff for taking on this sort of challenge in the first place. As for the first two Patron series, the drawings associated with each episode will be available as each video is released, so you can build along in real time if you wish. And of course, at the end of the series, one patron will get to keep the completed dial indicator. There's a lot of ground covered in this project, with much opportunity to pick and choose what you'd like to take away from it, and hopefully something for everyone. So be sure to check it out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.